Like I said before, every company uses what's called a brand book that has typography pieces in it to be used for all the stuff that they do. So let's look at Starbucks to see what they do. So when we start off looking at this, you're going to see that in their brand book, they have a typography section, and they say that they only use 3 typefaces to work with all of their branding material. And so it says that they're moving away from hand lettering, because if you remember, Starbucks did a lot of hand lettering back in the day to make it more kind of a mom and pop shop feel. But now they're moving away from that, and they're incorporating custom modifications to their typefaces. So in other words, a lot of these typefaces you're not going to be able to buy because they've paid someone to design them for them. So the first one is Pseudo Sans. You can buy Pseudo Sans. It is out there on the internet. However, you need to look at your licensing agreement if you want it. But they say Pseudo Sans is our most versatile typeface because it's frequently used in their body copy. So body copy is not their headlines. It's things that have a lot of text in there. So you see they have examples of this as far as where they use it. So I think it's a very clean typeface. You're going to see here that it's very clean, very simple. Looks a lot like other sans serifs that we use a lot. Okay, moving on to Landier. This one is a custom typeface of theirs. You can find knockoff versions of it, but you can't find the actual typeface like this. So this one is a serif typeface, and it's used as accents for more expressive moments. So even this one is not used a whole lot. It's used just for accent versions of it. And you'll see here it looks a little more luxurious, a little more friendly because of how it is laid out. It has a lot of thick and thin lines inside of it. So it's a really pretty typeface. And I understand that they only use it for expressive moments. That makes sense. Okay, so moving on to Pike. Pike is a custom typeface of theirs. You cannot buy it. It's more impactful, and it says that its condensed appearance can lend itself to a well-functioning headlines and wayfinding. So headlines, obviously, in any of their ads, even their TV commercials, they use this. And then as far as wayfinding inside of their store, any signage that tells you where to find things or how to get to the restrooms or anything like that, that's what's called wayfinding signage. So that's the one they use for that as well. So when it comes to these typefaces, what sets this one apart from the one earlier, the Pseudo Sans, this one is more condensed. Its typeface is more condensed. There's not as much space inside of the lettering of it. And we're going to look at that here in a minute because we're going to be redrawing the A from each of these typefaces to see the difference between them. Okay, so now that we've talked about those typefaces, let's actually pull them in and look at them in greater detail. You are provided a sheet this week to download that looks just like this one so that you can redraw these A's. So now that you can see them kind of side by side, you'll see the very different pieces of them. So you have Pseudo Sans here, Landier, and Pike. Okay, Pike and Pseudo Sans are both sans serif typefaces, so they don't have feet like Landier does here in the middle. But you're going to see a very unique difference between them. So looking at Pike first, we see that we have a very condensed spacing at the bottom of the letter A and up here at the top. But if we go over to the Pseudo Sans, we have a lot of space down here on our A. Now the top is a little more narrow, but you're going to see there's a ton of white space in the A versus over here. Now that's why they use this as body copy, because if this was really small, that space doesn't get lost in that A. Where if this one's shrunk down really small for body copy, you're going to lose this spacing right here in the middle. Okay. Now Landier is a beautiful typeface. It is a serif font, so it has these little feet on it. It has a lot of space in the A, but the problem is if this was body copy, this lovely small side over here would get real small and you wouldn't be able to see it, really to differentiate the characters whenever you're reading a lot of copy of it. So I think it was a really smart choice that they're using this for accent and probably at a larger typeface, just like Pike. But this is their body copy typeface. They use a very simple, easy to read typeface for the body copy. For this module, for you to really understand kind of the differences between these, you're going to hand draw these. Redraw these from scratch yourself. Now, I'm on an iPad Pro, but you can use your light board to lay a piece of paper over it to trace over it. You could use tracing paper to lay over the top of it and trace over it. But the point is, I want you to add these to your sketchbook. And that way you have an idea of the different typefaces that they're using and how very similar they are. They're not decorative. I want you to understand that. This one's a little decorative, but it's not super duper decorative whenever it comes to the typefaces that they use to convince you to buy their products. Okay, so let's get to drawing over these. I'm going to turn down the opacity of my layer so that I can use it for reference. So I'm going to get in here on this letter A. And you're going to notice it's very geometric. It's the same width here as it is over here. So to start this, we're just going to start drawing in this letter A. You can use a ruler. That'll really help as far as keeping your lines straight. Okay, so I have that one done. So I'm going to set that one over to the side. I'm going to move on to this one. You're going to notice on this one you have a lot of curves. So make sure you're moving your wrist to get those curves in. You're moving your elbow. You're drawing from the elbow and not just your wrist moving around all the time. Drawing is a full body event. I'm redrawing this in blue just so that you can see it. You do not have to draw this in a blue pencil. Okay, so there they are. All right, so at the bottom of them, I'm going to write the names of them, because it's not going to help you to have these in your sketchbook if you don't have the names of them. Okay, so putting those back on screen, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hide this layer. Now, do you see how these are not perfect? So I'll need to go back in and rework on them and modify them to make them look like they should. Just sketching over them is not perfect. You need to make sure that your work looks elegant, looks beautiful, and how to do that is to continually modify your work until it looks really good. So you could go in here and continue to modify that. If this is a piece of paper, I could use a ruler to work on that as well. But once you get it all modified to looking the way that you want it to look, I want you to go in and I want you to make notes on these to show what the differences is between them. So on this one, you could put yourself a little arrow and say narrow, because it's a narrow typeface. You could put, you know, that it's got thick pieces to it. This one is more wide. So this is your observations of this typeface. You know, what really kind of pay attention to it. What do these typefaces have that are different from one another? This is going to help you as an artist start to really see those things and to understand why companies use typefaces that they did in certain aspects of their designs. Once you kind of learn this and really start paying attention to the subtle differences between the two, because like I said, these two are sans serif typefaces, but they are very different from one another. And so making those observations, I mean, obviously this one's a serif typeface, but you're going to see that it has thick and thin lines inside of it. So it mimics more handwriting. versus these that are more kind of a display typeface for what you would normally find on computers or big signage. So really work on that. That's what you'll be turning in for your assessment, is your understanding and breakdown of these types for your instructor.